welcome. I'm Lori Berman, Vice President of Membership and Development for the Small Business Association of Michigan. Thank you for being with us today for today's webinar, Timeless Marketing Tools to See You Through Tough Times. Very relevant topic, if we might. Just a couple pointers before we get going. We are recording this. It's being shown live on Zoom as well as Facebook. It will be recorded and you'll be able to find it. It'll be on the SBAM website along with the slides that our presenter will share with us today. I ask you to put questions. We'd love to hear from you. Please put your questions in the Q&A and we will monitor those and go through your questions throughout. I ask if you have questions that are not related to today's subject, if you have questions about PPP loans or EIDL loans, advocacy, whatever it might be, please send those to sbam@sbam.org. That's SBAM@sbam.org. Otherwise, we'll deal with today's content. So I'm very excited to have with us Lynne Golodner. Lynne is a regular face. She is a VIP member of SBAM. We're really happy to have her back today. Lynne is the founder of her company. She's the Chief Creative Officer of Your People LLC. Lynne, tell us a little bit about your company.
So we do marketing and public relations, and it grew out of my 15-year journalistic career. When I founded the company in 2007, it was really to help small businesses and entrepreneurs figure out how to get themselves out there and build brand awareness. And so we've been doing this now for about 14 years.
Excellent. Lynne, I understand you also do some teaching. You're a professor. Tell us about that.
University of Detroit Mercy. I teach writing and communications courses. I'll be teaching public relations next year, actually. And I've taught for more than 20 years, and that is a part of my business. I really love to empower people with some of the skills of marketing and PR so that they can do them themselves, and it doesn't become this big question of how do I get out there.
Well, we appreciate you sharing those skills today. I also noticed that you're an author, and I hear your 9th book is coming out in June. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's called What's Your Why? And it's about meaning and purpose, which is the focus of my Make Meaning podcast. And it's really behind how we market for our clients and for ourselves too.
Well, excellent. Listen, thank you for being here today, Lynne. Thank you for sharing this with our members. And folks, please send us your questions here on the Q&A chat. With that, Lynne, I will let you take it away.
Thanks so much, Lori, and thank you so much to SBAM for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen, but I do invite everybody to ask questions as we go through, and I'd love to answer them as we're here together for the next hour. So today, what we're going to talk about is timeless marketing tools to see you through tough times. And we know we've been in a pretty unprecedented year. This pandemic and everything that has come with it is really testing a lot of companies and a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. And it's not impossible. I'm hearing stories of businesses closing, but I'm hearing stories of businesses thriving too. And so I think that really depends on your ability to pivot and to really meet the challenges that come your way. So we're going to talk about that today. And it actually is a lot easier than you think. So I want to start with a quote from my favorite marketing guru, Seth Godin. And what Seth teaches all the time, I've done some actual trainings with him over the years, and he's really quite an inspiring leader, but it's in its simplicity, what he teaches in his books and his courses. And what he says here is that a brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships. And all of those put together create a consumer's experience and decision to choose you over the competition. And that's really interesting because what I'm going to suggest today is that the three things that you need to market your business, whether it's in tough times or in robust times, are story, relationships, and purpose. And we're going to focus on that today. But what Seth is talking about is at the core of how my business functions, which is that you need to know what your story is and what makes you unique, then who needs to connect with you in a mutually beneficial way. And all of this needs to be driven by purpose. So let's dive in and see how we can apply that to all of you. So the first thing to think about is that you and what you do every day is so much more than a product or a service. There's a reason behind why you got into business, why you stay in business. why you love what you do. And that passion for your work needs to come through in order to really grab the ideal audience. So think about what's your why, which is the title of my book that's coming out later this year. But really think about that. Why do I show up every day? Why do I do this kind of work? Why am I in this company? Ask yourself why every single day. And those answers are what will direct you to a really strong marketing presence. So a little bit about me. I just want to introduce my background so that you know where this is all coming from. But I work mostly with entrepreneurs and small businesses, as well as schools and universities to market with meaning. So that meaning and purpose is pretty big in the work that I do. And again, like I said, it's all strategic storytelling, mutually beneficial relationships, and higher purpose. But the meaning behind it all is what really drives the train. So I've been self-employed since 1998. I worked in New York City and Washington, D.C. Before I came back to Detroit, I was a journalist in those cities and here. And then for 10 years, I was a freelance journalist before I created my company, Your People LLC. And I really created it out of necessity. So it was 2007, as you might remember. That was a pretty tumultuous time. We were entering into that major recession and economic downturn. We probably all know people who were out of work. It was pretty scary. And I started a business. So that might seem ridiculous or not very wise, but actually, I went into it with that sort of blind ambition and belief that most entrepreneurs have, which is that I had a great idea and I brought some talent and skill to the table. And so it would succeed. And because I believed in it, it did. And we just had an incredible upward climb for the years that followed. So I've now been in business for 14 years. And the book that's coming out this year, What's Your Why, looks at how you start with your personal meaning and then develop your story and then pour that into work that is purpose driven and really meaningful. And so it's at once instructive, but there's also a journal element to it, and it brings you along in an interactive way. So if you would like to know about the virtual book launch and all that, just put your name and email in the chat and I will make sure to get you on the list. But meanwhile, as I said, I own Your People. We've been doing this for 14 years. I am the host of the Make Meaning podcast, which has spurned the Make Meaning movement. And later this year, we are going to launch a whole set of courses called Marketing with Meaning. So that will be a deep dive for people who don't have big marketing budgets, but really want some assistance and guidance to learn these skills on their own. Because I do believe that everybody needs marketing and PR, but not everybody can or should pay a fortune for it. It's not rocket science. So if you can gather some of these skills for yourself, you'll be able to succeed with your business. All right, so let's start with the first of the 3 tools that are essential for getting you through tough times and succeeding and growing, and that is story. So story is a big deal right now, and my guru Seth Godin likes to say we're in a connection economy, and stories are the currency. So stories are everywhere. They've always been everywhere. We grow up on them. Our parents read us books at night. We learn in school by storytelling. Stories guide our beliefs and our behaviors. And now with technology, we send short stories every day in our text messages. We share longer stories in social media posts. Wherever people connect, whether it's in person or over the distance, they tell stories. It's the way we get to know each other. It's the way we make sense of our time here. It puts us in a context of a greater community and a greater purpose than just ourselves. And so I really think it's important to think about how story factors into your business. So when you think about all the different details and conversations that happen each day, which ones really stand out? How do you tell a story about your business that you can feel good about, but that other people can see themselves in? That exchange of ideas, that connection through words is what you want to capture. So a lot of businesses make a mistake of talking about how great they are. So here's what we do, here's what we sell, here's what we have to offer, without really thinking about the other person in this conversation. And that can be hard to do if you're doing this over digital formats or sending something out in the mail. You don't see the person receiving it, but you have to envision them there. You have to conjure that vision of who your ideal audience is and know who you're speaking to, what their fears and desires are, what they want reassurance on, and how does your company respond to it. It is a two-way exchange. Your business story is not just about you, it's about the possibility, the dream for the people who come to you. And if you think about it, it's quite a gift when somebody gives you their patronage. When they choose you over the competition, they are making an investment in themselves and in the belief of what you can do for them. And you have to honor that with a story that is rich enough to have meaning for them as well as for you. So it's a different lens than most marketing stories. Most marketing stories are all me centered, but really it can't be. It has to be an exchange. So in business, when we tell stories, we see them actually in commercials. We see them in ads. We see Super Bowl is coming up soon, and that's the epitome of storytelling. If you look at commercials in the Super Bowl, it tells us a lot about what our society cares about right now, what we're grappling with. I don't know if you thought of it that way, but it really, really does. And so when a business tells a good story, it's because it comes from the heart of humans. It has some authenticity that is very vulnerable, in fact. So how does your company come to be? Why do you show up every day? What is the common thread between everybody on your team? So when the business community succeeds in storytelling, it's because they're telling stories of possibilities. And I don't know if you can see this image behind the slide a little bit here, but it is an ad for a car, right? But what kind of story is this picture telling? So there's a car plunked down in the middle of a beautiful mountain landscape, and it's telling you a story of adventure, a story of possibility. There's a person over here who has no connection to the outside world, and it's a bright, beautiful day, and he can do this. That's what this is saying. With this car, you can go anywhere, you can do anything. It's not just that this car is going to get you to take your kids to school and go to the grocery and get you to work. It's that it's going to open up your life in ways that you can't even imagine. That's a story of possibility. And many businesses tell stories like this because they want the person who's going to engage with them to really believe in the brand. So think about brands that you know that tell stories of meaning, that tell stories of your life's purpose, about how you show up each day. Think of big yoga clothing brands and what they say all over the bags that hold the leggings that you purchase. Those messages are embedded in your hopes and dreams for yourself. And they're tying into it. And they're saying, with this clothing, we're getting you closer. So when you think about that, most people are purchasing potential, dreams, and hope when they do a transaction with you. They're not necessarily just buying what you are selling, they're buying so much more. So, how can you further this type of marketing storytelling in all of your different marketing channels? All right, so that story, kind of big, kind of hard to take that all in, right? And that could be a presentation in and of itself, and we can come back to it. But now I want to talk about relationships, because when you talk about storytelling, there is an implied message that there is somebody receiving this story. So you're doing the act of offering the story to the world, but somebody is receiving it and taking it in and engaging with it. And that implies a relationship. So who do you need to have relationships with in order to move your business forward? And have you approached it like relationships? Have you cultivated your customer connections in a way of deep connection and deep knowing as a relationship? And we're going to talk about this in a little bit as well. So let's talk about how we transcend transactions by weaving a story that is human, that is compelling, that is authentic, and then engaging in a relationship with our customers that goes deep. And you don't just want somebody to transact with you once, you want them to keep coming back again and again. You want this to be a long-lasting relationship. You want them to see the value in what you do above and beyond anybody else in the field. So to do that, your relationships first and foremost have to have mutual benefit. And that's a shift in perspective. It's not, come to me, I need your business, I want you to buy something from me. It's, I'm offering this, I see its value, I see how it will transform your life. And in turn, you're investing in me because you believe in that vision too. And I care about you and you care about me. And we're going to have this back and forth, this mutual benefit. That's really key. You have to actually care about your clients and believe that you're giving them something that's going to transform their lives, that's going to make a difference in the community. And they also believe in your vision. And that is a really beautiful relationship. And then I want you to think about this in a different way. So think about how you build any relationship in your personal life. Let's say you make a new friend. Let's say you meet somebody at a luncheon, or I don't know, you go on a vacation, you meet somebody at a resort, or whatever you're doing. You meet somebody, they're interesting, you have a little conversation, and you'd like to get to know them more. So what do you do next? You talk, you say, hey, let's get together for coffee or whatever it is. You exchange your contact info, and in an appropriate amount of time you reach out and you schedule a time to get together. Maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's in person. It's COVID, maybe different right now, but in normal times, let's say you go and you meet for coffee and you get to know each other. And when you're sitting there at that table over coffee, what are you talking about? You're getting to know them. You're asking questions. You want to know what they do for a living, where they live, what they love to do, what drives them, where did they grow up. You might ask these types of probing questions because you're truly curious. And if it's a good friendship, they're going to ask them back, right? And so it's an exploration to get to know who you are and how you got to be this person. And it's usually driven by curiosity and genuine interest. And after that cup of coffee and that meaningful conversation, you part ways with a smile and a wave and you leave. And what do you do next? You don't call them right away. You might send an email saying, hey, that was really fun. We should do it again. Or a little note in the mail, right? But you wait. There's a dance that happens when you're building a friendship or a relationship. It can't be all at once, and I'm going to call you every single day because that is weird, and you would think they're a stalker. You can't just sort of wait for them to show up. There has to be some effort on both sides. You know what those relationships are like when it's all you and not them. And so there is this exchange that goes on over time, and it takes a while before you have that kind of deep friendship that you can't imagine your life without them. Have you ever thought about your customers in this way? My bet is no. And so it's easy to understand because we're thinking of it as if it's a different landscape. But people are people, and people do business with people. So businesses are about human relationships. So, how would you transform the building of your customer base with this new knowledge? That's super, super important. And the next point in transcending transactions is, like I said earlier, you have to care about your customers. You have to wish them well. You have to actually want their lives to be good. And it's just like that in a regular relationship. You actually care about the person. You don't have disdain. You don't think it's all about you. You really do hope for their welfare. That has to be true in your business as well. There has to be a little bit of an emotional investment. And so to do that, you have to think about, what do they want or need? What do you want or need? And where is that middle point? Where is that synergy? This is how we build relationships that build our business. And obviously, you can infer this does not happen overnight. This is something that takes effort, it takes maintenance, it takes attention. And you have to be in for the long haul because otherwise, it's not going to be lasting. You're going to have a revolving door of customers. So think about that with relationships. So I want to explore this concept of mutual benefit a little bit more as it relates to marketing. So, mutual benefit, you can understand with a customer, right? They come to you seeking something, you need their business, it's a win win, but you can deepen that and make that a little bit more human. In marketing, where is the mutual benefit in some of your channels? So, let's go through those a little bit. So, these are some of the marketing channels that we use regularly with our customers and that a lot of businesses use. First and foremost is media. So, if you're pitching a TV station, a radio station, a newspaper, and you want them to do a story about you, do you think about the mutual benefit? Because my guess is that if you're successful in getting on TV or being interviewed in the paper, it's because you have that idea of mutual benefit. You know you have a really unique story to tell, but you also understand that the media are driven by humans and they have a job to do. They need to find compelling stories that are going to boost their ratings, that are going to attract likes, that are going to grow their readership, right? And when you understand that there's a need for them and there's a need for you, and you're respectful of that instead of grabbing, it's usually a win. With media, that's super, super important. And it can be so tantalizing to be interviewed by media. A lot of my customers want it more and more and more the minute they taste it. But there has to be that dance of mutual benefit with media relationships. We have to respect them for the job they're doing and the needs they have, and then they will for us as well. Do you do collaborations or seek referrals from like-minded businesses or past customers? If you do you look at that mutual benefit in that relationship? Because that's the only way it's going to succeed. So I work with a lot of schools, and one of the things we do is build brand ambassador programs. In those programs, we invite really excited parents of current students to sort of be leaders in a small committee of outreach. So whenever there's a school event or maybe on social media or whatever it is, they become ambassadors for the school. But we can't just say, hey, do this for us, because of course it makes our marketing easier. It's way more authentic when a friend is referring you to something, right? And their kids like your kids and they want to look at the school. But there has to be something more for them too. I mean, it's clearly a win for the school. What's the win? What's the benefit to the ambassador? And so when we build ambassador programs, as an example, we build in um, implicit gratitude, gifts for the ambassadors. Like, do we do Starbucks gift cards, or do we have a coffee cart when we have an ambassador committee meeting at school? Do we give them merchandise that bears the school name or things like that? Little gifts that show that we're really grateful that they've taken the time and put that effort out. So every time you get a referral from a client, do you thank them? Every time you have a neighbor or a friend who sends business your way, what do you do for them? It's a big deal. And that should be part of your way of doing business, is that somebody sends business your way, you send them something, that mutual benefit. Okay, your website. You think, there's no way my website has mutual benefit. It's all about my company, right? This one is really fun, but it's also where I find a lot of stubbornness. Everybody thinks their website should talk all about them, but really no. And I hope that I'm getting this message across about what marketing should be. It's never just about you. It needs to be about what brought that person to your website. So there's so much research that shows that when people have anxiety or unmet desires, they take to the internet and they search late at night when they can't sleep and they're worrying about something. They search for answers. Maybe it's on their phone, maybe it's in front of their computer when the whole house is asleep, but they're surfing. And when they land at your website and it's 2 a.m., how are you responding to that need, to their worry, to what reassurance does your website provide? So that's a different way to look at your website, right? Of course, you have to talk about what you do, what you sell, all the different things that you have to offer. But you have to speak directly to that person who's coming with a need and a question. And that changes things. So when I work with clients to build their websites, we look at that. Who's your audience? And the answer can't be anybody could be my customer. And that may be true, but it's really hard to achieve. So the more narrowly you can focus your audience, the more specifically you can speak to them directly. So you can sort of see where I'm going with this. So e-blasts, social media, blogs, events, podcasts, these are all marketing tools. And they're great marketing tools. And I work with all of them for my clients and for myself. But all of them have to look at that relationship, that mutual benefit. Like, why should they read your e-blast? Why should they like your post or comment on it even? Why should somebody come to your blog and then why should they read the whole thing? Or why should they share it? That question of why is super important. And if you can't find the mutual benefit, it may not be time to do that channel. So it's just something to think about. How can you take a lens of mutual benefit today after we finish together and look at your marketing efforts and see where can I make it more mutually beneficial? It's super important. I also want to remind you guys to put your questions in the Q&A because I really want to hear from you. So we're sort of halfway through the webinar and I want to make sure I'm getting your questions answered. So I do want to talk about this notion of being in tough times. So let's just put it right out in front of us. It's a pandemic. It's a scary time and it's really uncertain for a lot of businesses. So how can you do all this with the constraints of what we have right now? So storytelling, yeah, you can do that. You don't need to be in person. I mean, it's great when you are, but you don't have to be, right? Relationships are always better when we can be face to face. And we're seeing the impact of negative social media on our psyche, on our connections in a very fraught year of politics, of racial turmoil, of death and disease and scariness, right? So how do we build that connection in these tough times? And I understand if it feels overwhelming. But the first thing you can do is in every message show that you care and that you understand that people are going through tough things. If you are fortunate enough to not have gotten sick, to not have lost anybody to this virus. That is phenomenal. But just know that other people might have. And so, how can you show that you care in your communications? That is super, super important. Um, Eric is asking, how can we get people to focus on life after COVID? I'm going to address that in just 1 minute. So, thank you for asking that. But just remember that at this time, but also all the time, it's not just in a pandemic, people want to know that they matter. They want to know that they're being heard. They want to know that they're going to be okay. This is not unique to a pandemic. This is not something that is just happening now. People have these worries and concerns and insecurities in normal times. And so that's the important thing to remember. Yes, we need an extra sensitivity at this time. But as Eric was asking, how do we get people to focus on life after COVID? I'm going to be honest with you, Eric, you can't get them to focus on it now because they're not in it. They don't know what life after COVID looks like, and we're not there yet. And all we can do is be here right now. And so, how do we make the situation better with what we have to offer and with who we are? And we'll get to life after COVID when we get to life after COVID. And at that point, it'll be something different. And you'll already be in this relationship telling this story. But the truth is that you can't focus on something that you can't picture. And that's where people are right now. So the best thing you can do in your marketing storytelling is to talk about the here and now and be a sound support for people who need it, and also an inspiration. Like, what do you do that is so meaningful and purpose driven that other people would admire that? I mean, maybe you're even a distraction from what their worries are because you offer great content and great insight and hope. So, how can you take people to life after COVID with what you're doing today? That's what I would focus on. I would focus on being in today, not overly looking at COVID. I don't in my work. I don't sit there and say, oh my gosh, we're in a pandemic. I do the work in front of me. I talk about what is strong from my business, from my customers. I focus on what they bring to the table and highlight that. I don't focus on COVID, and I don't yearn for what's next. I'm right here, right now. And in business and in life, it is all you can do. You can only be here right now. And that's never going to change. I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, Eric, but I do appreciate the question. And I'm happy to argue it with you if you'd like to. All right. So, as we're talking about meaningful relationships, that meaning and purpose, which is going to be our number 3, which is coming next, is super important. So, as I said before, people do business with people. And I want you to think about who you might need to make really good relationships with to move your brand forward. So, are there key people in your company or in your community that would be really meaningful relationships that would be good for them and good for you? And I would even make a list. I would start thinking about that and really getting specific. And then once you identify a handful, a half dozen, even a dozen, how do you connect with them? So is this somebody that you know personally? Is this somebody that you're connected with on social media? Are you part of a business roundtable together or a chamber? How often do you see them and in what context? And what do you have that sort of ties you together, the common thread? And so then you can sort of put an ask out there that benefits you both. Like, hey, let's take this to the next level. Let's ramp it up. So rather than waiting and hoping for referrals from other people, how can you generate them? How can you inspire them? But again, with that mutual benefit driving it. And I bet this is closer than you think. I bet that there's a list that you could put together in the next 10 minutes, and then you could work toward it and see progress happening. It's easier than you think, and it's already under your nose. All right, so we talked about storytelling. We talked about relationships. So now we're going to get into purpose. And this is the touchy-feely stuff that you might want to poo-poo, but I'm telling you, it will transform your business and it'll transform your life. That's why I focus so much on meaning and purpose. So let's take a deep breath and let's think about it. And these are questions that you may never have asked yourself, and a lot of people haven't, and that's okay. But it can be a lot of fun to see where it takes you. So the first question is why your business or organization exists. And so it could be why you started it, but why does it exist today? Has there been an evolution? Who you're serving now, is that the same as who you set out to serve? Do you look at it as service? really looking at that why. Like, why does your business need to be here? So if I turn it on myself, there's tons of marketing companies, tons of public relations companies. Why do we need another, right? And I think that my company exists because we bring a different perspective than any of my colleagues in the field. And I know tons of people who are great at PR, who are great at marketing, and they offer something really unique. But so do I. I bring this meaning and purpose lens to it. And also this idea of empowerment, of looking at um, how can I empower you to do some of your marketing pretty easily, that kind of thing. So I think that's really important to know why you exist and how you can fully step into it. So then your next why is, who do you help? And so, who is that audience avatar? Who is that specific customer? Can you paint a picture of who that is and how you truly help them? So if I turn it back on me, I would say I like to help small business owners, small schools and universities that don't have big budgets, but need help with marketing. And so they want somebody to guide them, but they really want to be able to do it on their own. And I believe that they can do it on their own. And so that's a win-win right there. I'm not saying you just need to pay me a ton of money, and you can, but you don't need to, because I think you can do some of this in-house, and I'm happy to help you. And so that identifies, I have friends who are like, nope, I'll do it for you. And that's who I am. And that's great. And you should go to them. But if you don't want to, there's me. I just wanted to thank Eric for his follow-up comment. So in the chat, he said, we have survived worse. We will get what we focus on. And if we focus on the crap, we'll get more crap. Very well said. I like that. And so thank you for your comment. I think that's really awesome. But I really like what you had to say. So anyway, then when we're back to purpose, after you look at why you exist, who you help, and why you help them, and why you care about them, like ask yourself, why do I want to serve this audience? Like really dig deep. Then we do what's called in our foundational narrative. And that's something that I love to do because I was a writer first. And so writing is my true love. But it's, what are the words we're using that are sort of the anchor story for all your marketing efforts? And so we spend a lot of time with clients trying to figure out the words, the phrases, the story that we want to tell. And that's mission statement, vision statement, tagline, 5 to 10 paragraphs of like anchor content, a boilerplate, core values, all that stuff. We develop that, and that presents your foundation of how you can talk about what you do with your ideal audience. It makes it a lot easier to be consistent, and then you're known for what you want to be known for. And that's one of the problems in marketing, is when people are shifting and changing all the time. So I thought you did this, but then I thought you did that, but then you sell this. So once you decide how you want to be known, those words really matter. So these questions are really important. I encourage you guys to free write about this and just see what answers come to you so that you can position yourself to be the best that you can be in your niche. And the more specific you get with it, the more narrowly you can focus, which is the more successful you can be. When you're really serving a very focused audience, they will know and they will come to you because of your expertise. So think about this. This purpose needs to be your North Star. What's driving all you're doing? Your why needs to define your marketing. When you go out there, you need to be crystal clear on this. And so before you can go out there, you need to get clear. And these types of questions will help to take you there. Finally, when you are developing your marketing strategy, I want you to ask yourselves why. So why are you setting certain goals? So when you set a revenue goal, what's the basis for that? Why this number over another number? When you set a goal for customers, why? Why do you need 25 instead of 20? And answer the question honestly, because once you know what's driving this, what that passion is, you will have a better chance of getting there if it becomes realistic. When you offer types of programs or services, why are you offering those? Are all of these programs and services what you should be offering, or should you pivot in some way? Has this unique time taught you that you could shuffle a little bit and get more focused and meet a need that you didn't see before? Maybe an old service goes away in favor of a new service that's just more needed. So asking why you're offering the different programs or services that you offer is super important. And then finally, is your whole team aligned in your marketing effort? So this is something that I love to mention, and not everybody thinks of it this way, but every job on a team is actually marketing. So what do I mean by that? So no, they're not involved in the marketing. Everybody has different jobs and goals, but every single person who's part of your company represents your company, for better or for worse. When they're on their personal Facebook and people know they work for you, are they representing your company well? Do they align with the values? Are they passionate about it? If the answer is no, it doesn't mean that you should get rid of people. It means that we need to have some kind of a coming together of that purpose behind the company and everything that we're doing so that everybody's on board. When everybody's on board, they become your ambassadors. They become your word of mouth marketers. If everybody's in it and they're all tied with this vision, it can really take flight. And so that's a great reason to bring everybody into the marketing conversation so that their eyes are open, their insights are valuable. They might love your company for a reason totally different from what you thought. And that could actually help with your content, with your story. And they may have relationships that could build your business. So why not at least have peripheral conversations where every single person becomes an ambassador, even if their core job isn't marketing? All right. We're winding down a little bit, and I know that's a lot of content, so I do want to get your questions. So make sure that you put any questions you have in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to answer them. But I think it would be a worthwhile exercise for individuals to do this questioning of why before you do it for your business. So if every single person in the company did a little bit of self-exploration about why they're here, why they do this job, et cetera, and really hit on that clarity, then you do it as a team, it'll be much, much stronger. So if as a business owner, you have never done this, I invite you to do it. It would be fantastic. So I think that you want to, ask yourselves, um, who am I? Why am I doing this work? Why am I in this position? And is it a fit for me? Who am I at the core? Can we define ourselves not by the work we do, not by the relationships we're in, not by some of the superficial things like I live here and I drive that car and I whatever? Can we define ourselves differently? It's a hard exercise. But if you can do that and say, this is what I bring to the table, then you can look at your company in a different way. And so if you do that personally, and then you say to the company, let's define ourselves not by services and products, but by value, by vision, how we help, how we make a difference. How would that transform your marketing? How would that transform the business you do? Because I'm telling you that all of this takes you to a deeper level and your customers will appreciate you more. So when you can offer that depth and that soundness, they will be on board. So you get to the core of why you exist and the benefit you bring to the marketplace, and you put that out there. It inspires other people to live big too. So, we talked about story, relationships. Ask yourself these questions and then put your story together in a way that speaks to the heart of the people that need to hear it. When you focus on why in every aspect, you add meaning to your work, you elevate your outcomes. Believe me, you will do better. You will have stronger revenues. You will have more satisfaction. You'll have more repeat business because people will have a reason to engage with you, not just because they like the look of your product or the swiftness or the price of your service. Price is never the reason people should come to you. It should be because of something much bigger, because then when the price changes, they're gone. And also, we also know that people use two reasons that they say for not connecting or not engaging. And they are, I don't have the money and I don't have the time. Neither one is ever the reason. Because when we see value, we find the time and we find the money. It's that simple. So it's value, it's vision that you have to offer. And then people are along for the ride. So I would love to connect with you guys. I'm going to invite you to ask questions. Please put your email in the chat if you'd like to receive updates on all this and be invited to the virtual book launch. It's the first time I'm doing a virtual book launch. It'll be a fun adventure, but I would love to hear if you guys have any questions, and I can go deeper. So what do we have?
Thank you, Lynn. Really good information. I love the storytelling, identifying our purpose. And I appreciate you answering those questions along the way. Okay, viewers, don't be shy. I'll see if we have any on Facebook that are asking questions.
See one Q&A. So John asked, do you have any tips or tricks to build connections during the pandemic? Yeah, it's really tough, John, isn't it? I mean, you know, I'll admit sometimes I can be a homebody. And so I like the slower pace. And it's just easier to sort of hunker down at home, but I do miss that connection with people. And doing a virtual networking is nice, but it's not quite the same, right?
Right.
So the tips and tricks that I would have would be to actually have phone calls. So if you're in, definitely do networking at, either SBAM or local chamber or whatever kind of organization you have, whatever they offer on Zoom or virtually, and then take it a step further. So, say, hey, can I have your email or whatever it is? I'd really like to learn more about you, and schedule a phone call. So either do a Zoom where you can look face to face, but if you've been on Zoom all day and you don't want to, I get that too. Pick up the phone, which we rarely do, and have a conversation and get to know someone. If you're brave enough, you can also venture outdoors in this incredible cold and go have coffee somewhere. And so that is something that you could do too. But I think you have to make a concerted effort to make those connections. And frankly, you have to do that even when you're in a face-to-face networking situation, because it can go by so quickly and be a whirlwind that you don't really have deep conversations with anyone. And so I think that if you can just give yourself the goal of like one person a month or one person a week, whatever you have the bandwidth for, I'm going to work my way up to calling somebody and getting to know them better. I think that would really help. And it will help us to feel more connected during this really tough time too. It's a good question, John. I appreciate it. Eric asked, talk more about how I help businesses learn how to do their own marketing. Yeah, sure. So thanks for asking that, Eric. So I have been a college professor for 20 years, and I love teaching. And I do believe that a lot of this it's not rocket science, but when you're working on your business, it's hard to market your business. And so I have always tried to find ways to make it into bite-sized chunks so that you can do one skill at a time. And so I'm launching a 2-month course. I've been doing some courses for schools about how they can build their marketing. And I'm expanding that to other schools and universities, but I'm launching a course for marketing with meaning, where over 8 weeks, you'll have, group coaching, you'll have one-on-ones, you'll have like bite-sized chunks of different marketing tasks so that you can look at the big picture to build a strategy, but then how to implement in steps. And then I'm also going to be launching later this year a monthly membership that's really affordable, where people can get this even slower, so that it might feel like I can't do that all in 8 weeks, but I can, show up a couple times a month and learn some little skills, work on testing it, and have somebody to coach me through it. And then once I feel like I've gotten that one, I'll move on to the next. And so that's really how I work on empowering people. It's one step at a time. First, understand the big picture. Then let's tackle social media. Let's tackle a blog. Let's look at your website, whatever it is, step by step. And to know that you can't do it all at once. So if you're going to do it yourself, being generous with yourself and saying, I can't implement everything at once. So I'm going to choose, one social media post a week instead of 5. And I know I can handle that. And maybe next month I'll do 2, in bite-sized chunks, I think is the best way. I'd be happy to talk with you further if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We do have a question from Keisha on Facebook. She
sure.
would like to know, what are tips to identify your target audience?
That is a great question, Keisha. And I think a lot of people struggle with this. I admit I do too, even though I work in this, because the knee-jerk response is anybody could be my customer. And that may be true. I mean, maybe anybody could be your customer, but you can't reach out to everybody all at once. So the best thing you can do is 2 things. You can do sort of an audit. Who has been my customer base over the past 5 years? And really taking a look back through and seeing who came to you and how did they come to you, who stayed with you the longest, why did they stay with you. You could even do some exploratory interviews to find out why they did and what they liked about you, so you could identify it from the horse's mouth. The other thing you can do is have an honest conversation with yourself about who you want to work with. So who would you like your customers to be? And that can be scary because you might be leaving out a whole other audience. But if you have that deep dive conversation and say, I really want to work with, I don't know, schools. I really want to work with doctors. I really want to work with whomever. You can narrow that down and you can get more specific within that realm and you can become an expert in that industry. And there's nothing wrong with, and it's very empowering to do this, just saying, I'm going to specialize in this, and that's what I'm going to do. Because then you can target it really well. You can then go and speak to associations for that industry. You can ask for referral relationships. You know the language. You could just say, I'm not going to be everything to everyone. I'm going to focus on this. And that's a pretty confident way to go about business. I do want to get to one question in the chat really quickly. Sasha says, how do you change messaging that has been rooted for so long? Won't we confuse our customers? Where do we start? Great question. And I'm going to say that your customers don't know your messaging as well as you think they do. And we get so many messages a day. I have some stats somewhere in one of my presentations that we don't really digest them all. And so if you change your messaging, it can be something to promote, hey, we're reinventing ourselves, we are evolving, we are expanding, whatever it is, so that you call attention to the new messaging. But I think that you sort of take them along the journey with you. And I think it's wise every 5 years to redo your foundational narrative, including mission and vision. And because your company evolves and changes, and I think you should speak to that every single year, you should have a new marketing strategy. Because again, circumstances change, conditions change, your core competencies change as well. But that messaging should change every 5 years. And if you do that, you can tweak it, you can massage it along the way. But I think you say, hey, we love our loyal customers. We're so happy that we've done X, Y, and Z for all these years. Now we're taking this direction. Come with us on the journey. I think they'll love it. Any other questions?
I don't see any more on Facebook. Thank you again. Really interesting, Lynn. We appreciate it. I hope you'll come back and share with our members again in the future.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me, Lori.
All right. Bye now. Thank you, everybody.